/satire?
I looked for satire, and I had trouble coming up with something that would fit. So I picked drinking, and I was a bit surprised that you even gave me that as one of your choices, because one of my choices, because I have to say that, you know, in the last couple of years, oh, well, that explains it. Because, you know, I'd say in the last couple of years, the references to drinking that quite often come out of Susan's mouth are in respect to certain members of the Hughes family, usually containing the phrase, "I think you've had enough." Anyway, so I'm going to read parts of Burns's poem called Scotch Drink, but because Sue also asked me to, you know, maybe bring a couple of jokes, I took the liberty of interspersing some of the verses with some humorous digressions. And I hope that during the poem, actually, that a certain amount of Scotch drink will be consumed. This will be the time. Gie him strong drink until he wink. That's sinking in despair, and liquor good to fire his blood that's pressed with grief and care. There let him bowse and deep carouse with bumpers flowing o'er, till he forgets his loves or debts, and minds his griefs no more. Let other poets raise a fracas about vines and wines and drunken Bacchus, and crabbit names and stories raucous, and grate our lug. I sing the juice Scotch bear can make us in glass or jug. O thou, my muse, good old Scotch drink, whether thou wimpling worms or jink, or richly brown ream o'er the brink in glorious fame, inspire me till I lift by the wink to sing thy name. Let husky wheat the house adorn, and eight set up their ony horn, and peas and beans at e'en or morn perfume the plain. Lees me on thee, John Barleycorn, thou king of grain. An Englishman, an Irishman, and a Scotsman walk into a bar, and each of them order a whiskey. The barman pours them out, and immediately 3 flies fall at one into each of the whiskies. The barman doesn't notice, sets up the whiskies in front of the 3 of them. The Englishman takes his whiskey, looks inside, and goes, ugh, and pushes it away. The Irishman sees the whiskey, sees the fly in the whiskey, goes out, flicks it away, and chugs it down. The Scotsman sees the fly in the whiskey, picks it up by the wing, holds it over the glass, and says, "You bastard, spit it out!" On the earth, Scotland shows her could, in supple scones the whale of food, or tumbling in the boiling flood with kale and beef. But when thou pours thy strong heart's blood, there thou shines chief. Food fills the wame and keeps us leaving, though life's a gift no worth receiving, when heavy dragged with pine and grieving. But oiled by thee, the wheels of life gee downhill, screaming with rattling glee. On a flight from Glasgow, an English businessman reaches his plane seat and is surprised to see a parrot strapped in next to him. The Englishman asks the flight attendant for a coffee, whereupon the parrot squawks, "Ah, and get me a whiskey, you cow!" The flight attendant, flustered, brings back a whiskey for the parrot and completely forgets the coffee. When this is pointed out to her, The parrot drains its glass and bawls,
"Get me another whiskey, you bitch!"
quite upset. The young woman comes back shaking with another whiskey, but still no coffee. Unaccustomed to such poor service, the businessman tries the parrot's approach. "Look here, miss," he says. "I've asked you twice for coffee. Go and get it now, or I'll kick your ass." The next moment, both he and the parrot have been wrenched up and thrown out of the emergency exit by two burly male Scottish flight attendants. Plunging downwards, the parrot turns to the businessman and says, "You know, for someone who can't fly, you're a ballsy bastard." Thou clears the head o' doited leer, thou cheers the heart o' drooping care, thou strings the nerves o' labour sair, that's weary toil. Thou even brightens dark despair with gloomy smile. When neighbours anger at a plea, and just as wood can be, how easy can the barley tree cement the quarrel? It's aye the cheapest lawyer's fee to taste the barrel. Seems to me that Burns is saying here that when you're arguing with your neighbours, a bottle of scotch is a lot cheaper than paying a lawyer. Speaking of arguing, Jock and Angus are in the pub having a whiskey together. And they're arguing about who has the most control over his wife. Meanwhile, Hamish, sitting nearby, says nothing. After a while, Jock turns to Hamish and says, "Well, what's it like in your house?" Hamish says, "I'll tell you, last night my wife came crawling to me on her hands and knees." The other two are amazed. "What happened then?" they asked. Hamish takes a big swallow of his whiskey and says, "Well, she said, 'Get out from under the bed and fight like a man.'" "We worth that brandy burning trash. Fell source of money a pain and brash, twins money a poor drunken hash o' half his days, and sends beside all Scotland's cash to her worst phase. Ye Scots, well, I wished all Scotland well. Ye chief, to tell ye my tale, I tell, poor plackless devils like myself, it sets you ill wi' bitter, dirtful wines to melt, of foreign gill." A Scotsman, who's already drunk, walks into a bar in New York. He drinks a couple of whiskies at the bar, and then he clutches his stomach and says to the bartender, "Oh, I shouldn't have had that last plate of curry. Where's your toilet?" The bartender points to the far end of the bar. The Scotsman staggers off, and a few minutes later, an anguished scream comes from behind the door, followed by several more. The bartender then rushes into the men's room, opens the door and says, "What the hell is your problem?" The drunken Scotsman looks up very pathetically with tears running both down his cheeks and says, "Every time I flush this damn toilet, feels like I'm crushing my testicles." The bartender says, "Well, maybe that's because you're sitting on the mop bucket." Me gravels round his blather inch, and goats torment him inch by inch. What twists his gruntle with a clutch of sour disdain. Out o'er a glass of whiskey, punch with honest men. Oh, whiskey, soul of plays and pranks, accept a bardy's grateful thanks when wanting thee, what tuneless cranks are my poor verses. Thou comes, they rattle i' the ranks at others' arses. A Scotsman is stranded on a desert island, alone 10 years. One day he sees a speck on the horizon. He thinks, It's not a ship. Spec gets a little closer and he thinks, it's not a boat. Spec gets even closer and he thinks, it's not a raft. Then, out of the surf comes a gorgeous blonde woman wearing a wetsuit and scuba gear. She comes up to the Scotsman and he says, how long has it been since you've had a cigarette? 10 years, he says. She reaches over and unzips from a waterproof pocket on her left sleeve, pulls out a packet of fresh cigarettes. He takes one, lights it, and takes a drag. Oh man, that's really good. Then she asks, well, how long has it been since you've had a drink of whiskey? He replies, 10 years! She reaches over, unzips a waterproof pocket on the right, pulls out a flask, gives it to him. He takes a long swig and he says, oh, that's fantastic! Then she starts unzipping this long zipper that runs all the way down the front of her wetsuit. She says to him, well, how long has it been since you've had some real fun? The Scotsman replies, oh my God, don't tell me you've got a pool table in there.
Golf course.
Gain strong drink until they wink, that sinking in despair, and liquor good to fire his blood that's pressed with grief and care, that let him bows and deep carouse with bumpers flowing o'er, till he forgets his loves or debts and minds his griefs no more. Scotch drink, I toast.
Yeah.